sell
Do buyers
data.
want contextual?
Yeah. Dude, like,
okay, let's not ruin this. I'm so curious about, like, this is exactly the conversation topic. All right.
Yeah, no, it's good because, like, you know, I'll just tell you my experience has been, like, it's very hard for my sales teams to do that, you know, and I've had, you know,
Let's stop talking.
All right. Oh, I thought we were recording. No. All right. All right. Welcome, everybody. Today we've got Scott Messer with the Leaf Group. How you doing, Scott? Oh yeah, good to see you, buddy.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome. I like what you're doing there.
with the glasses and
yeah, the glasses. Good look. It's a good look. Yeah. So.
Sorry, guys. I just had my autoresponder on there for a minute.
Is that
really you're ruining
meetings?
Yeah, you're blowing yourself up now. Like, now, anytime, you know, people in your company are in there and they see you with the blue hoodie and glasses, they're going to be like, he's not here.
I mean, what if I'm wearing like a blue sweatshirt though? Could be this guy.
This man came prepared.
Well, I mean, next level.
Yeah,
Next level.
Step into my Thunderdome.
Yeah, there it is. So, I mean, I think that's a wrap. I mean, that was pretty good right there. What else can we do on top of that?
Episode 3 is done.
We're done. Thank you, Scott. It was easy.
No, thank you very much. Have a great day.
We're excited to have Scott on. Scott, we've known each other for quite some time. One of the smartest guys in the biz. And earlier this year, hey-o, Scott Exotic.
All evidence to the contrary.
Scott Exotic. You know, Scott, you wrote a fun piece in just before January, thinking about what 2020 would be. And obviously so much has happened in 2020.
Shocking. You got the pandemic, though. You missed the cookies, got the pandemic.
It's crazy.
I mean, I kind of called it at the end, right?
For anybody who hasn't read it, it's called on Publishers and Ad Tech for 2020. So check that out. But Scott, what are your thoughts on some of the things that you wrote about in there? Because clearly some stuff has changed, right? And so, do not panic, right? So what are your thoughts for publishers, ad tech, buyers, for everybody?
I think the big thing is that this is still a temporary disruption that will have lasting effects and implications. But people that are starting to pivot their businesses really hard, or, you know, take their product roadmap in wildly different directions, you might be overcorrecting a little bit too soon. That doesn't mean that, you know, your cost saving measures and those things, those are absolutely essential and should go into effect. But it's not time to fully panic yet. Ask yourself if your business is healthy. Is your website healthy? Is your relationship with your readers healthy?
And what do you define as healthy?
I mean, not arbitrage, right? Let's start there. You know, do you like, was your business running in a good way before? And if the answer is yes, and your traffic is maybe up or down a little bit, but your CPMs are off, then what are you really going to change? You know, like this will pass, or it won't, but assuming that it will, we just have to go with the idea that things are going to get back to something like normal. You guys were talking about it in your last Happens Ad Ops of, you know, what you can do and like sort of retool right now. I think that's a great idea. I've cousins in North Dakota that are farmers, and you know what they do during the winter? They take their tractors apart. They take every piece of equipment and they dismantle all of them and they clean everything, and then they reassemble it. So it comes like
that is a fantastic metaphor for what we should be doing.
Amazing. It's out of control.
I never thought I'd be looking to a Dakota to answer my, but like, that's it.
They're wise in some places.
No, it's crazy. You know, there was a couple of really interesting parts. Shouts to North Dakota. There was, I thought, some really interesting parts of your piece, which still may actually be very true for the remainder of this year. One of them I thought was interesting was your comments and your thoughts on the golden era of header bidding. What were your thoughts on that for those who haven't read?
Yeah. So really the interesting thing is now is like header bidding is relatively ubiquitous. I don't think you'll find a top 1,000 ComScore publisher not running header bidding. Potentially maybe one or two that have some deep e-commerce strategies or like super direct businesses, but they are few and far between at this point. And then there's interesting conversations of like, what is an SSP, right? That's not the same as what is the difference between an SSP and an ad exchange. We don't need to start.
I really wanted to get started on this one, but yes.
No, we're not going there. But like, what is an SSP versus the ad server? What is the value of an SSP? What is the value of header bidding? And if all exchanges become ubiquitous, and if SPO really has its way, the need for redundancies goes down and differentiation becomes more difficult. So what do you do as an SSP or a wrapper or any of those sort of integrations to make yourself different and stand out and valuable in the chain?
Is anyone doing anything to stand? Like, I'll give my answer first, so you don't have to just go. It feels like no one is. It feels like everyone is like, hey, you know what we'll do? We'll provide you analytics. Now, granted, it's just going to be analytics about our stuff or like the things that we can see. And so that's not, because you can't see AdX inventory, like any AdX reporting other than from AdX. So like, it's totally pointless. And we really don't know why we're doing this other than to say that we're doing a new thing. Is anyone actually providing, like taking the step to provide value and not just provide a thing that they're claiming is value?
Yeah. There's some that are striking like unique demand deals. You've seen a couple.
Are these the, if these are the post-auction discount deals, do we
they're
count
not.
those?
They're not.
I was like,
they're not.
Are we going to consider those unique or like something we want?
No. I mean, take a look at Index Exchange has their Merkle deal. They've got Roundel. I'm sure Goodway Group, aside from their SPO things or whatever, like they've got some deals, and people are, I think the trading desks are starting to pick their sides. Now it may be aligned with pads or SPOs or something, but
we can get into this later. We'll call this foreshadowing.
They're picking their sides though, right? And so like whoever signs those up and like gets the deal on them, you get exclusive something, and that makes a difference, right? So it might come down to what is the exclusivity on the buy side, not which publishers you have exclusively, but which, what are the trade side you represent?
What's old is new again. This feels like ad networks 2.2.
Dude, ad networks were like a heady day for ad ops people. That really separated the young from the weak when you had to waterfall. Header bidding's like made it kind of easy.
Listen, real interesting article in Exchange Wire about sort of, the ad network sort of maybe winning the decade with
the verticalized ad network one?
Yeah,
is that the one?
So, but we'll have some folks on to talk about that.
Karen O'Kane's one of my favorites, by the way.
Yeah, I mean,
his tinfoil hat to the max, and he is super smart and sharp. I dig everything they're doing. I had breakfast with him right before coronavirus lockdown. It was wild. He's a good dude.
That's great, man. No, love his stuff, and shouts to that crew there, man. But it's interesting, talking about SPO and like I think there's different sort of ideas of what SPO is, right? So there's like SPO depending on who's talking about it, right? But as guys who are sort of living through and operators living through that with our teams, and also seeing what's happening out in the space. It's amazing, how buyers are still sort of buying in all kinds of environments and choosing to continue down those paths, right? So there's
default selecting all exchanges and their DSP, which is a shock. Like,
so there's an idea. That's a thing. There's an idea of SPO sort of really happening, and then there's also how the money ends up going through there, right? So they're sort of two different things. What are some of your thoughts on that, Scott, and also you too, Ryan? Starting with Scott.
Yeah. So first of all, we know that SPO only is currently as advanced as exchange is like DSP to exchange. That's as advanced as SPO is right now. Nobody's gotten to like the 10,000, 14 million connections or whatever it is. Like they haven't figured that out yet. They just say like this thing to that thing is generally bad and we're going to turn all of those off. So whether you're on AMP, mobile, desktop, America, international, like none of that's taken into consideration in SPO right now. So you're using sledgehammers and we're talking scalpels.
Yeah.
I'd be curious, like who's even, because again, SPO, to my understanding, and I think O'Kelly commented on one of my tweets to say that this is why it was built back in the day of second parties, when there were exchanges that were messing with a second price, when there were exchanges messing with a second price auction. SPO was built so they could figure out which exchanges those were. That was it. It was really just to cut out the bad actors in this second price auction system. And it has since turned into sort of the best path to spend your money. But it doesn't like, that's a tricky thing to define. And are you defining that, like, are you defining how granular are you getting in that definition? Is it by like it's not by publisher to what Scott was just saying.
They're not.
So
yet.
It's just exchange level, but like that there are such different integrations across publishers for each exchange. Like it is very much sledgehammer. Like it's a bunch of smart people doing a dumb thing because they think it sounds smart.
I mean, their
now,
egos
are we talking
their
about
body can't cash.
I was going to say, are we talking about the wall, the truth? What are we talking about here?
So they and you know, it's like it's novel of where they want to go and how far down they want to get into SPO. What the really interesting thing is, like, SPO only applies to open auction, right? There is no SPO of private auctions. In fact, that would specifically be demand path optimization, correct, Eric? You know, it's like, here is a cheap, effective private auction pipe. That's the most efficient way to buy my inventory to come through a private auction.
I'm doing this again. I can't believe this might actually be a thing I do that I just realized because of this stupid Zoom. Yeah, the timeout. I didn't know that. I didn't know I did that.
We need a whistle. You need a whistle.
All right, back it up a bit. What is demand path optimization? For those that have not read or have not heard or might be confused by other articles using DPO as an acronym, not that I'm speaking directly of one. What is that?
Yeah, Eric, you want to take it? You coined it.
I'll let you.
Yeah,
I like you.
It is demand path optimization is the practice of showing buyers the most efficient way to purchase your inventory.
So the cheapest pipes.
Yeah, sure.
I don't mean that in a negative way, but yeah.
Cheap, less, you know, rev share is really the big thing. When a publisher takes their inventory to market, there's the publisher, the SSP, and then it's gone. And then it's like out of our hands. The only thing that a publisher controls is that take rate, their rev share with the SSP. And then after that, who knows what happens to it? Ads.text tries to like sort of limit that down, sellers.json, and like everyone, you know, to keep the resellers from doing what they do. But that's all open auction stuff. Nobody's reselling a private auction. And so in demand path optimization, you say the best way for you to buy my inventory without a relationship is going through some open auction pipe. But if you want to be the most secure, come in through a private auction.
Have you, because I've been talking about this idea, I stole the term, I believe, from another publisher, but we've been trying to get people up on this idea of using a deal ID, which tends to have a lower take rate, as an open auction tactic for a buyer. Are buyers catching on to that? Do they, like, when you're having conversation, like, do they understand what that is? Does it feels almost like I'm telling them, hey, here's a way to do 10 times more work. Can it be as easy to them as setting up their open auction tactic? Or is there still a degree of like extra work tax that it takes to set up these deal IDs?
There's one extra step, and that's when let me pretend to be a buy-side trader. I don't know the trials and tribulations that they really go through. But when you want to run an open auction, you're just doing a mass retargeting campaign. You select 10 exchanges, you know, you'd be at 10x times the internet, and then you just let your things run. But if you wanted to use, you know, our our specific open auction, we call them $0 floor deals. You can take that one to the bank. They have to click like that deal and include it, right? And so
are most buyers, once they like,
I think the open auction team and the private auction teams are sort of operate in different spheres.
Still? Is that really still happening?
A little bit. I mean, some of them are like, we're going to run campaigns through privates, and then some are going through opens, or at least I think the tactic, like here's an open auction strategy, and then here's our private strategy. I don't think they get mixed into the same, you know, media plan necessarily. There's a separate or same order or line item, or like however they sort of break those out. So it is an extra step, but think about it. You're getting it. It's like going to the farmer's market and you're getting fruit straight from the farmer. It didn't go through the distribution hub. It didn't go through any of that. That's what we're doing, but it is a little bit harder to go to the farmer's market.
No, it is like if there's any buyer listening to this, please ask every publisher about this, because it makes so much more sense. Like, you don't have to do anything special. It's coming straight from us. You know, there's not a degree of fraud in there that you may not know. Like there, and you get more bang for your media buck.
You get avocados all day.
You can get that avocado toast, and you can still, you know, afford a house. But it feels like, I don't know. To me, now granted, I'm not a seller, but it feels like it's a lot more difficult than it should be. Like, I should just be giving away candy, but instead it feels like I have to convince people that not only is this candy, but like that they, you know, like
and when you set these, they're easy to set up. I mean, you know, it's a run of network pipe. It's got a super low floor. There's no targeting in it. They can do whatever they want, but you're just like, yo, this is my inventory wholesale direct from the manufacturer. And
pretty simple concept, right? And it really effective though on the other end, right? I mean, it's like, you want to avoid all the stuff that you pay extra people to detect, to block, to stop doing, to find, to do all that. Like, got it. You know, we can do that, right? And
I know it sounds like a lot of work for the buy side, but at the same time, like, if you set up 100 of these, you've covered yourself now. You don't need much of an open auction. It's a
whitelist almost. Right?
Yes. No, it is a whitelist. And if a publisher doesn't, like, it's almost like a low pass filter where, like, if a publisher doesn't understand this or doesn't know to do this, I would be concerned about the team in the background of that publisher that doesn't understand what is being asked here.
Yep. So let's talk about like take rate and how that affects and plays out, right? So if a marketer puts in, you have your publisher private pipe here and your open auction pipe here. All right, Google AdX open auction has a take rate of,
I'm not dare saying.
Standard, it's standard. And other pipes are less, right? So if a marketer puts $1 into this jukebox and $1 into this jukebox, when it comes through this one, it comes out as 85 cents, 90 cents. And when it comes through this one, it comes out as 80 cents. And those bids, that's the net bid that shows up in the publisher header auction, wherever you want it, and you're competing on a net basis. So that's 85 versus 80 or 90 versus 80. And automatically the same dollar that goes in works harder and fights harder and gets better inventory and has higher win rates. And the publisher didn't do anything. They're literally just like, I don't know, I get a little bit more money either way, but I really hope you do it through this efficient thing that I've given you.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, there actually isn't a downside. I mean, the trade-off, like, I know some publishers, if you haven't done it, I know, like, I've talked to yield people who are skeptical of this because it feels like you're undervaluing your deal IDs, but you're not, because you're not really providing service. That's always what I explain. Like, the difference between a good deal ID and what this is there's no white glove service. Like, I'm not doing anything for the buyer. I'm just simply saying, like, here's my stuff. It's clean, you know, farmer's market versus grocer. Yeah. And so if you're a publisher and you don't do this currently, please do. It's we want to make.
We use it all day.
Yeah,
we really do.
I've stolen that now.
Yeah, we use it all day. You know.
Yeah, we want to make those easy for them.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about what both of you think. I alluded to this when in our pre-call, but like, what do you think of, because these are coming up a lot, and like I can game theory these out a million different ways, and I can't see how they're a good thing, but I don't want to load the deck beforehand. SPO agreements, you're seeing them. You're seeing exchanges sign deals with either DSPs or with holding companies that are these SPO agreements. How, based on the definition of SPO we talked about 10 minutes ago, 5 minutes ago, in which you're simply trying to like get the best, how is that working for a publisher? And generally, I'm not saying all the time, but most of the time when exchanges start engaging in these, they then ask publishers to sign an addendum to their agreement or a separate, there's some sort of transparency thing or a privacy thing that goes with it. If you're a publisher, do you sign those? Are you on board for exchanges signing SPO agreements?
Depends whose pocket it comes out of. I think there's two kinds of SPO agreements that we really see. One is better than the other. I think there's one really coming at like the kickback discount style, and that one's like weird. Like the auction settled.
Does anyone make it clear which one they are? Like it feels
they
like
do. They do.
Really?
No, people will say, because the other kind is actually where the SSP lowers their, like, they pay back they give the discount out of their cut. The more that trading desk spends. So the publisher gets the same amount, the same net amount. The cut is coming out of the SSP side, and that's their marketing money. That's what they're paying to keep the demand flowing. So I'm okay with that.
It's really like a bulk rate deal.
So
like it's
publisher,
really like
so layperson, contract idiot, me. What key phrases should I look for that help me differentiate between the evil version and the not evil version? I'm using
ask where does the cut come from, and does this change the bids that are entered, right? Like is this a post auction discount or where does the cut come out of?
Well, and that's an entirely separate thing. This post auction discount. First,
no, this is the same thing. It's like whose pocket is this coming out of?
But is that so? And it feels weird asking you this, but maybe you just have more intel than I do, and not maybe. It sounds like you do.
I doubt that.
For these SPO agreements, are some of them just purely we agree then to push post auction discounts on your behalf? Is that just like what that is? For the
nobody can push post auction discounts on your behalf.
No. Sorry, I exchange am going to push post auction discounts for you, DSP or agency, and like that's what the agreement is, and then through that I make, like that's where the cut is being made. Is that
it's definitely a process you agree to, right? So it's
if I made $100 net through an SSP, right, and they competed against all my other auctions, I expect that check to be for $100.
Me too. That's why it doesn't make any sense why a publisher would sign or agree to these.
In the good kind, that cut is coming out of the SSP's share, right? Because if it was a 10% thing, then you made 110 or 109, whatever that math, 111, and that math works out, right? So they get $11, I get $100, right? But they're saying in this SPO, grease wheel thing, I'm going to take 7, and you're still getting 100, and that other 4,
right? Because agency or whatever has agreed to a minimum volume of whatever. So
exactly.
I'm not going to ask you to name the bad players. Who's doing this right then?
There's a couple out there. I've heard them.
Yeah. I was gonna pause real quick and do like a quick timeout too, because I think also the idea of this is like, woo, this is it, right? So when you think about the agreements we're talking about, it also depends on like the type of publisher you really are, right? So that also dictates the sort of terms around these sorts of things. So one kind of win looks one way for someone, and another kind of win looks different if you're a different type of publisher.
There are two different types of publisher of the quality publisher, there are two different types. There's a scale play and there's a quality. Like there's someone that has to play on a premium, which is what I do. My play is premium. And then there's someone that plays on scale and reach. If you're a real lucky, you can maybe find sort of the middle of that Venn diagram where you're like a verticalized publisher that has decent scale. But otherwise, I think you're playing one or the other. Like general news publishers are going to be trying to play the premium in some way, shape, or form, unless you're like a general news publisher whose average article is less than 250 words. Then you're
right. But I mean, if we also think outside of that too, you know, lifestyle publishers, right, arts and entertainment, right, you know, so it's like it's different. The win is different that you take away from the type of structured deal, right? So back to like what you guys were talking about, but remember, there's like 2 million websites out there. Right.
That's
like,
what Eric's always talking for the. No, it's good because
this is the perspective, right? Like, you know, you've got a 100-year-old brand. You know what I mean? It's got both print, it's got events, it's got a great web presence. But the reality is most of the 163, which is even more amazing, right? But the majority of the web, the other 1.9 million, right, is actually sites that have great audiences, are extremely loyal. You know, who are we to say like why a user spends time there? And it's not always clickbait, and it's not always because they don't know that they ended up there, right? It's like, you know, you think about like why a user goes somewhere and spends 6 minutes on a site that has a, you know, a URL that you barely recognize, right? It's like, it's amazing, right? I mean, so, but that's what I'm saying. I think the win can look one way for, you know, top 500, top, you know, 250, and then, you know, go 1,000, 2,500 out, right? I mean, zoom out like that. I mean, you'd be surprised with the URLs that are there that have good audiences. So a win looks different there, actually within the framework that you just described. Because like what you were saying, like Scott and Ryan, like the agreement to do this type of, hey, you're going to end up with something, kind of the win looks different for
is that I legit, this is, and we're having this conversation live.
I love it.
Is it different? Like I feel like good practices are good regardless. Like you know, and there are companies that need fill. Like this is just when I say, you know, scale versus quality or premium, it's just like those that are looking for fill versus those that are looking for CPM. And like that's kind of the balance that every publisher is making. It's
but like, you know, what if your company is never going to have a sales force, right?
I think it's about direct. It's about reserved versus non-reserved. It's not premium or not. It's like how much
or it's insertion order, or if it's insertion order versus like not a legacy insertion order, right? You know what I mean?
Versus not reserved.
Yeah, it's like
even then, it feels like there are some that yes, generally speaking, if you have a sales team, but like there are plenty of sales team types that are purely scale. Still, like I think they're becoming less and less frequent, but I can name a few off the top of my head that are still that. But then like there's still a premium play to be made for a purely programmatic publisher. That is a hell of an alliteration. But it's
I mean, I also think like this is where it's great to zoom out, right? And so step outside of the publisher, the supply position. We're all always sort of, you know, thinking about day in and day out about, and we think about the buyers, right? And we think about our buy side partners and even the folks controlling the money. So when we think about where they're like thinking about pouring most of their money into, you got to figure out a way to sort of play ball that way, right? And for the most part, it's not going to be doing it through a person one-to-one sort of thing. Because remember, one-to-one is one-to-one. And the way we're talking about is like, can still be one-to-one, but serve one to a lot. You know, and that's what
that's a good question. How do you do this DPO deal? How do you do these DPO deals, the like zero floor, but still through deal ID without a sales force? Because like, let's say I'm an ad ops person at a ComScore 2000 company or whatever, like you know.
Well, that's why, I mean, that's why you give Scott or me a holler, or, you know what I mean? Work with somebody, well, you know, you work with somebody reputable that can help you do that. Right. And that's an interesting thing that I think is really important on the web. You know, this term of like a intermediary or someone who helps manage that process has been there since the beginning. You know what I mean? Has literally been there since the late 90s. The problem is that a lot of the space has gotten muddied with, like Scott earlier on, you were saying like now sort of header bidding is kind of like table stakes. A lot of people know how to do it, right? There was a time where it was like 20% of the web, 10% of the web. We were guys who were doing it early on, right? And then you saw it turn to 60% to like 80%. So what you have to do to really do the right thing and help a publisher has to be on these layers just above that and more, right? And
By the way, I
so
appreciate the subtle art of nonverbal communication Scott is giving us here.
It's the greatest.
He's a people person, all right?
Right? But yeah, no, I mean, like it's that's where, you know, you have to find folks that can help you do that, and it's becoming harder and harder, you know, for buyers to understand who those people are, right? Which is why you see, you know, resellers getting you know, a bad rap, or why you see folks who are just like, if I don't know who you are, then I really don't know if I want to work with you or not, you know. But that's where we were saying, like, for folks who don't have a sales team like that, or don't have experienced operators, you got to work with somebody who knows what they're doing, you know.
You need like your like ad tech yogis. Sit up on a mountain and.
Well, and how do you differentiate? Like, I feel confident that I could probably start to differentiate now, but it's only because I've been doing this for as long as I have. Let's say you're a publisher of a local or a mid-size or a regional publisher that gets quality audience, gets people for that 6 minutes. Like,
Yeah.
How do I differentiate between you, Scott, or you, Eric, and shady huckster who can say all the same words and has a slick PowerPoint? Like, how do I tell?
Our fancy looking website, you know what I mean?
Dude.
Like, just has like
Money
wild,
talks.
yeah, money talks. And also, I think this is also where I think it's interesting. Credentials are going to matter more moving forward, right? So it's like, you know, there are people that you're going to want to work with because they're established. They've done these things before, and they're tackling some of the new stuff that's happening, right? So ad tech 2.0 is coming, right? So we're looking at ID consortiums, we're looking at the cookie crumbling and all that. And if so somebody's just promising you a little bit of lift, promising you fill rate, right? Promising you a little bit more CPM, promising you all this like weird stuff, because it's happening, right? Like there's all these people that just basically like dangling this weird thing in front of you. You're gonna have to start working with people with credentials, you know? So
I feel like I walked into the sales pitch for you too. Didn't mean to. I'm generally not for this. I'm against these sorts of things.
I'm happily employed by my company, and we're you know, this is what we look at, and we train, and I think you as a publisher, when you're trying to bring somebody on, you know, definitely start slow with somebody and get them in a if you're going into a consulting thing, start with like a little bit of work and see if you just like working with them, right? See how much transparency you get. You know, do you have to be taught certain things? That may be something that is a great question. Eric, you might appreciate this. You know, someone coming to you and saying like, look, I know where I want to be. I don't know how to get there. But I also don't know where I am right now. Can you please like teach me everything I need to know so that I understand the conversation we're about to have for an hour, right? Like some people aren't even that close, and they really need those educations. And so start slow, get into that, and then read everything and like try to become an expert. You know,
this was going to be my final question for you, which is just like, all right, I want to take someone from like 101 to 201. How do you do it? What are you recommending? What are you either reading? What are you trying? Like how do I get to a JV level understanding from someone that doesn't know squat?
Start your own. If you can't play with your actual websites, start your own. Set up DFP on that and like try to connect the pipes, right? Like get in an environment where if you break it, it doesn't matter. Get into the online trainings. I know you guys talked about like Trade Desk got some, IAB has theirs for what those are. You know, ask around in the publisher groups. Like I'm sure Beeler would love to host another Programmatic 101. Like I write Programmatic 101 decks literally once a year. And I think everybody does. They're out there.
You know what's interesting, Scott, to that point too, and Ryan, with your question, you'd be amazed with like great media brands, great publishing brands, great websites, like internally, they have to do these kinds of things, right? So this is not like an external problem with like sites who are outside of the ComScore 1000, right? Even within the walls of great organizations that are killing it and end up in all the trade pubs, they have to go through this process, just like Scott described, like once a year. Or imagine the complexities that are coming with, like, when you just mentioned JV. I mean, somebody's gonna have to go to varsity, like big time, and actually go pro level, right? Cookie crumbles, 24 months, 18 months probably, right? We have no idea what's coming. But there are folks who are just trying to figure out what was going on 4 years ago, let alone like, how are you gonna figure out how to make money?
Yeah.
When things really change. And that is not specific to sites that have sales forces and don't, you know?
Yeah. What's also really neat is to look at brands that have started in the last like 2 years. They don't know what a waterfall is. Like they're just starting, where like header bidding is like, okay, so that's where we start. Now what? You know, so you don't need to have like the whole history of it. Just start wherever you are and learn about it, push some levers, do some things. Like the worst you do is you change it tomorrow. I always say, like, push all the buttons, you can't break it.
Until it breaks.
That's the perfect end. We're good. That's how we're gonna wrap this. I think push a bunch of buttons, see if you break it. Or wait, you can't break it.
Call Ryan when it's broken.
No, call one of you two. You got.
Hello. He's calling him.
That's my brother.
Scott can be in two places at once. Yeah.
He's good. He's all right. He just like comes in here every now and then.
You have somebody to bring you coffee. This is amazing.
Yeah, it's a little late.
You see, he had an Initech mug.
Definitely a wrap. Ryan and I are out of beers, so we're out of drinks. So this is it. Everybody, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Very cool, you guys.
Thank you, Scott's brother.
Thank you very much. It was fun being on here.
It was great.
Appreciate it, you guys.